Today we're on the final two chapters of the 11th Canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is about the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty as well as the disappearance of Sri Krishna from this world. A sad moment, and yet much to understand from this. Very, very profound to understand the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Lord. Why does he come? Why does he leave? What method does he choose? All kinds of lovely information that you'll get today. So it begins with King Parikshit. Now, King Parikshit, as you know, was the king who was inquiring about the Bhagavatam, and Shukadev was speaking to him. We've been going through this now for quite a while, a few years in fact, this discussion about the Bhagavatam. So King Parikshit asked the question, after the great devotee Uddhava left for the forest, what did the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the protector of all living beings, do in the city of Dwarka? So just to give you a short recap, Uddhava and Krishna had been talking for quite a while. We've gone through almost more than 20 episodes of their conversation. And we learned a lot during that time. And at the end of that conversation, Krishna sent Uddhava away on a particular mission. And now Krishna himself is preparing to leave the world. So what Parikshit the king is asking is, after Uddhava left for the forest, what did Krishna do in the city of Dwarka? After his own dynasty met destruction from the curse of the Brahmin, how could the best of the Yadus, Krishna, give up his body, the dearmost object for all eyes? So the story about the destruction of the Yadu dynasty was mentioned in the early part of the 11th canto, right in the beginning. I'll recap it for you in just a little bit. But first I want to touch upon this lovely point he's making here. How could the best of the Yadus, Krishna, give up his body, which is the dearmost object of all eyes? You know, our eyes, they long for something. And what is that? Beauty. And Krishna is the most beautiful. He is the epitome of all beauty. But we'll come to that as well. But first, let's understand that Krishna has a form. God has a form. What kind of form? Is it a physical form like you and I have, a physical material body made of skin and blood and flesh and bones? No, Krishna makes it very clear in the ninth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, text number 11, where he says, fools deride me. Deride me means make fun of me, mock me, put me, insult me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. This is very telling. On one hand, Krishna is speaking that I am the Supreme Lord of all that be. And on the other hand, he's saying that I have a transcendental nature. What is transcendental? There is material nature. What is transcendental nature? That which transcends matter, which transcends the material world. That is transcendental. And then he goes on to explain in chapter 4, text number 6 of the Bhagavad Gita, although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, by my internal energy I appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So once again, we have a corroboration of the same statement that he has a transcendental form. Now, to put this in simple language, it means a spiritual form, a form that is not made of material elements, but rather is Sat Chit Ananda. Now, you may have heard that the divine light, the essence, the Brahma Jyoti, most people just say the light, that is spiritual in nature. It is not material. That means that it is Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. the soul itself, each one of us, is also Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. But that soul that we are is inhabiting a physical body and is identified with the mind and is now carrying on in this world under the illusion that this is me, that these things I have, they are mine, these family members, my house, my car, this is mine. And that is the illusion, and that now I want this and I want that and the other, and this will make me happy. So this is the complete illusion of this world. But Krishna is saying, I appear by my internal energy. In other words, that which is internal for us, the soul, is what is entirely the makeup of Krishna's form. That is why it is transcendent. And he appears millennium after millennium, again and again and again. Why? He comes to support us, to free the earth from all the miscreants who are creating trouble on the earth, and to give pleasure to his devotees and to invite us back home to be with him. In the Narad Pancharatra, it is said, by concentrating one's attention on the transcendental form of Krishna, who is all-pervading and beyond time and space, one becomes absorbed in thinking of Krishna and then attains the happy state of transcendental association with him. So he is all-pervading and beyond time and space, and yet he has a transcendental form. So you may ask the question, if he is all-pervading, that means he's everywhere, then how can he be somewhere, as in having a form, as in having a body? And the question can be reiterated in another way, well, why not? Why can that which is not the supreme being not only have a spiritual form, but have thousands of spiritual forms, as many as he desires to have? Many different facets of himself, many different clones or even aspects of himself. Why can he not? Who are we to stand, because we are limited to this one body and we cannot be other than this one body. We cannot leave this body and now be in another body and walk around there. No, that doesn't mean that which is our source, that which is God, that which is the Supreme Lord cannot have that freedom. He does. And what the Narad Pancharatra is saying, by concentrating one's attention on that transcendental form, that Satchitananda, that eternal, blissful, beautiful form of Krishna, then one also reaches a happy state of transcendental association with him by meditating on his form. So now the Bhagavatam continues in the 11th canto, chapter. It actually was, this is from the chapter 1, in the beginning of the Bhagavat of the 11th canto, text number 6 and 7, where it was saying that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the reservoir of all beautiful things. And all beautiful things emanate from him. He is the reservoir of all beauty. All beautiful things come from him. And his personal form is so attractive that it steals away the eyes from all other objects which seem devoid of beauty in comparison to him. When Krishna was on the earth, he attracted the eyes of all people. When Krishna spoke, his words attracted the minds of all who remembered them. And now here in the final chapters of the Bhagavatam, this same point is being repeated. It says here, once their eyes were fixed upon his transcendental form, women were unable to withdraw them from him. Once their eyes were fixed on his transcendental form, women were unable to withdraw their eyes from looking at him. And once that form had entered into the ears of sages, and become fixed in their hearts, it would never depart. So when someone, a wise, enlightened being, would meditate on the form of Krishna, would meditate on the Paramatma within the heart, or would see him face to face, that image would never disappear. They would continue to always keep finding him everywhere. So what to speak of acquiring fame? The great poets who describe the beauty of Krishna's form would have their words invested with transcendently pleasing attraction. So those who were poets and described Krishna's form, they invoked a transcendently pleasing mood in those who read those words with an open heart. They became attracted to the beauty of Krishna. So the great poets who would describe the beauty of Krishna's form would have their words invested with transcendently pleasing attraction. And by seeing that form on Arjun's chariot, all the warriors on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, that's where the Mahabharata was fought, that's where the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. By seeing that form of Krishna on Arjun's chariot, all the warriors on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained the liberation of gaining a spiritual body similar to that of Krishna, to that of Vishnu actually. So that is called Sarupya Mukti, to gain a form that is as beautiful as the Supreme Lord, just by being present on that battlefield, just by being there, they gained a spiritual form. Everyone who was in that battle, the millions of people who came to fight, whether in favor of Dharma or against Dharma, in favor of Krishna or against Krishna, all of them received liberation. In the purport, it is explained transcendental liberated personalities such as the gopis of Vrindavan and Rukmini in Dwarka were constantly meditating on Krishna's spiritual form. Great liberated sages, having heard about his beauty, could not take it out of their hearts, especially once they had darshan, once they were able to see him. And this can happen even now. His bodily beauty expanded the love and poetic expression of great liberated poets. Then the Bhagavatam continues, having observed many disturbing signs in the sky, on the earth, and in outer space, Krishna addressed his family members, the Yadus. He assembled them in the Sudharma council hall. So he had where he would hold his government. He was the king, so he would call together people. So he called all his family members in the Sudharma council hall, and he said to them, O leaders of the Yadu dynasty, please note all these terrible omens that have appeared in Dwarka, just like the flags of death. We should not remain here a moment longer. So there were omens that were indicating that something very terrible was about to happen. He said, the women, children, and old men should leave this city and go to Shankodhara. We, that is the rest of the men there, will go to Prabhas Kshetra, where the river Saraswati flows towards the west. River Saraswati used to flow back then, has since dried up and no longer exists. But yes, so they were going to Prabhas Kshetra, where the river Saraswati flows towards the west. Then we should bathe for purification, fast, and fix our minds in meditation. We should then worship the devas, the demigods, and the Brahmins. This is the appropriate process for counteracting our imminent adversity, and it is sure to bring about the highest good fortune. Such worship of the demigods, Brahmins, and cows can earn the highest birth for all living entities. A very important point here. Krishna is talking about earning the highest birth for all living entities. How does one get this highest birth? What does that mean? To be elevated to the heavenly planets. Many people want to go to heaven. What they're really talking about is going to the heavenly planets, where one has a much longer lifetime, more beautiful body, where there's all kinds of wonderful luxuries and pleasures. People are not really interested in going to the kingdom of God, though they might say so. Because to get to the kingdom of God, you have to absolutely transform yourself. You cannot go as you are. But you can go to the heavenly planets through doing pious deeds and good deeds and being good, doing all kinds of things in the mode of goodness. Yeah, sure. Not to the kingdom of God. So this highest birth that he's referring to here, by worshipping the devas, the demigods, the Brahmins, the cows, and people who are in religious belief and who worship God for the purpose of salvation or going to heaven or whatever, that's where they're headed. They're headed for the heavenly planets. Everything about their descriptions of heaven, everything about their descriptions of God, and everything about their descriptions of what that life after death looks like refers to what the Vedas call the heavenly planets or Svargalok. It is not the kingdom of God. That is Vaikuntha. That is the place beyond all birth and beyond birth and death. The spiritual world is beyond birth and death, beyond anything physical. There is no material body in the spiritual world. You have only a spiritual form. And that spiritual form is never dies, is never born, never gets sick, never gets old. And that's the kind of liberation that was given to everyone in the battlefield, even of Kurukshetra. What to say of all the people who came to even attack Krishna, and then he blessed them with that, because they came with, whether you come to him with love or with hate, as long as you are focused on God, whether you love him intensely or hate him intensely, do it intensely. Because whatever way you connect with him, you will get the benefit of your association with him. Having heard these words from Krishna, the elders of the Yadu dynasty agreed. After crossing over the ocean, so they were in an island, the island of Dwarka. It's worthwhile seeing that. Dwarka was an island city. And Krishna was the head of that. So everybody got onto boats and crossed the ocean. And they proceeded on chariots to Prabhas. There, with great devotion, the Yadavas performed the religious ceremonies according to the instructions of Krishna, their personal lord. They also performed various other auspicious rituals. Now, I think it's time at this stage to recap a little bit of what was said earlier on in the 11th Canto, chapter 1, where they talked about the curse that was, or how the Yadavas, Krishna's family, his dynasty, were cursed and why. So over there it explained that the Yadu dynasty, Krishna's dynasty, his family, which was protected by him and which had helped eliminate the kings who with their armies had been the burden of this earth, that is during the time of the Mahabharata. After that battle of the Mahabharata, Krishna thought to himself, although some may say that the earth's burden is now gone, and in my opinion, it is not yet gone, because there still remains the Yadu dynasty itself, whose strength is unbearable for the earth. So to give you a little context, the devas, the demigods, Brahma, Shiva, all of them had come and appealed to Vishnu that this earth was now filled with all kinds of adharmic people, that is, people who were against dharma, people who were causing great havoc to others. Just like you see nowadays, there's been a Hitler, there's been other tyrants who have walked this earth, who have created massive mayhem, murdering millions of people, raping women, doing all kinds of abusive things, creating havoc on earth for humanity. This was also happening before Krishna came into this world, and he came to free the earth from all these people. Of course, they've come back again. They've been here for the last few thousand years again. They've taken birth again. Their propensity for evil hasn't gone. So what he's saying is that Krishna had wiped out all those kings and their soldiers, and all their millions had died in the battle of the Mahabharata. Now all that remained was the Yadu dynasty, Krishna's own family, and they had become extremely powerful and opulent and in some ways even proud. It's natural. It happens to all of us. When we get a lot of wealth, we get a lot of power, it happens. And again, this is part of the Leela. None of them were actually proud. None of them were actually attached to the things of this world. But they were going through a process that Krishna wanted them to go through. And Krishna was feeling that they're so undefeatable, his family members, so powerful, that they too could possibly become a burden on this earth. And he had promised to free the earth of all such beings. No outside force could ever bring about the defeat of Krishna's family, the Yadu dynasty, whose members have always been fully surrendered to him and were unrestricted in their opulence. So Krishna thought, if I inspire a quarrel within the dynasty, that quarrel will act just like a fire created from the friction of bamboo in a grove, and then I shall achieve my real purpose and return to my eternal abode, the spiritual world. So with that background in mind, we come now to the present time. The Supreme Almighty Lord, whose desire always comes to pass, made up his mind to withdraw his own family on the pretext of a curse spoken by an assembly of Brahmins. By his will, many great sages headed by Narad and Vishwamitra assembled at the holy place named Pindarka, near the city of Dwarka. The young boys of the Yadu family, absorbed in a playful mood, also arrived there. Now, at this point, this is all Krishna's arrangement. Just see how things are going to unfold here. These boys, they dressed Samba. One of the boys, whose name was Samba. And so they dressed him as if he was a pregnant woman about to give birth. And they inquired from the sages. So they came to all these sages who were sitting there, and they inquired from him as if to tease them or, somehow fool them. They inquired from the sages about what kind of baby was this woman going to have, so-called woman. See, again, let me recap for you. One of the boys dressed up as a woman, and they came before these saintly people, the sages, and they asked, what kind of baby is this woman going to have? This woman who was actually a boy dressed in woman's clothing. Okay, so they were trying to play a prank. The sages cursed the mocking boys by saying, she will give birth to a club that will destroy your family. Now, these sages would never have given a curse like this. These sages would never have done a thing like this that would destroy the entire family of the Yadus. But this was the will of Krishna, and they were aligned with him, and they knew exactly what had to be done. So all of this Leela, this pastime is playing out. You need to keep that in mind as you listen. So now the boys, frightened by this curse, lifted the garment from Samba's abdomen and found a club. Right? They found that club that they had talked, that these sages had said there would be a club which would annihilate or destroy the entire family of the Yadus. So now all of them hurried to the king, the assembly of Ugrasena, the king of the Yadus, and they offered a report of everything that had taken place. So the king Ugrasena is actually the father-in-law of Krishna. Fearing the Brahmin's curse, Yaduraj Ugrasena ordered the club ground to powder and thrown into the ocean. Now what happened with that? The metal pieces that were ground finally found their way to the shore. And then from there sprouted bamboo, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So, and the last little bit that was left over was swallowed by a fish. It swallowed the remaining lump of iron, and the waves carried all the bits of ground powder to the shore, where they were implanted and eventually grew into a grove of bamboo sticks, bamboo canes. Fishermen caught the fish, and a hunter. So remember that the remaining lump that was there, small little piece, was swallowed by a fish. And a hunter named Jara used the iron lump found in the belly of the fish to create an arrow. And this arrow is what will ultimately now he will use to kill Krishna. Although Sri Krishna understood what was happening, he did not wish to do anything to counteract it. Instead, he sanctioned these events. So now we come back into the Bhagavatam at text number 12 here. It says, their intelligence covered by providence, the Yadus liberally indulged in drinking the sweet Maireya beverage, which can completely intoxicate the mind. So now one evening, they had left Dwarka, they had come to this place, they were performing these rituals, and one evening they started drinking and drinking and drinking. And this particular beverage is so powerful that they were having, completely intoxicated their mind. They became intoxicated from their extravagant drinking and began to feel arrogant when they were thus bewildered by the personal potency of Krishna. So there's like a spell that was cast on them in a way. This is the personal potency, the Yogamaya of Krishna. And because of the influence of Yogamaya, a terrible quarrel arose amongst the Yadus. Infuriated, they seized their bows with each other. They seized their bows and arrows, their swords and clubs, their lances and spears, and attacked one another on the shore of the ocean. These are very powerful warriors, riding on elephants and chariots with flags flying, and also on donkeys, camels, bulls, buffaloes, mules, and even human beings. The extremely enraged warriors came together and violently attacked one another with arrows or other weapons. The members of the various Yadu clans, being blinded by intoxication, completely abandoned their natural friendship. They fought fiercely and slaughtered one another. Now, many of them were family members, right? Many of them were relatives. They thus bewildered. Sons fought with fathers, brothers with brothers, nephews with paternal and maternal uncles, and grandsons with grandfathers. Friends fought with friends, and well-wishers with well-wishers. In this way, intimate friends and relatives all killed one another. All of them ended up killing one another. With all their bows, when all their bows had been broken and their arrows and other missiles spent, they seized the tall stalks of cane with their bare hands. So remember that the particles of the iron the iron club had been shaved and they had been thrown into the ocean, and those particles of iron had now grown into bamboo canes, which were as strong as iron. So they seized these tall stalks of cane with their bare hands. And as soon as they took these cane stalks in their fists, the stalks changed into iron rods as hard as thunderbolts. With these weapons, the warriors began attacking one another again and again. And when Krishna tried to stop them, they attacked him as well. Now they're even attacking Krishna. In their confused state, they even mistook Balaram, Krishna's brother, for an enemy. Weapons in hand, they ran toward him with the intention of killing him. Krishna and Balaram then became very angry. Picking up cane stalks, they moved about within the battle and began to kill with those clubs. The violent anger of these warriors, who were overcome by the Brahmin's curse and bewildered by Krishna's illusory energy, now led them to their annihilation, just as fire that starts in a bamboo grove destroys the entire forest. When all the members of his own dynasty were thus destroyed, Krishna thought to himself that at last the burden of the earth had been removed. At this point, Balaram sat down on the shore of the ocean, fixed himself in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, his brother, his beloved. And merging himself within himself, he gave up this mortal world. Balaram was undefeatable by anyone. He gave up this mortal world, left completely, just vanished. After the departure of Balaram, Krishna sat down silently on the ground under a nearby peepal tree. He began exhibiting his brilliantly effulgent four-handed form, the radiance of which, just like a smokeless fire, dissipated the darkness in all directions. His complexion was the color of a dark blue cloud, and his effulgence the color of molten gold. And his all auspicious form bore the mark of Srivatsa. So these are all the signs of Vishnu. A beautiful smile graced his lotus face. Locks of dark blue hair adorned his head. His lotus eyes were very attractive, and his shark-shaped earrings glittered. He wore a pair of silken garments, an ornamental belt, the sacred thread, bracelets and arm ornaments, along with a helmet, the Kaustubha jewel, necklaces, armlets, and other royal emblems. Encircling his body were flower garlands and his personal weapons in their embodied forms. As he sat, he held his left foot with its lotus red sole upon his right thigh. So it crossed his legs. Just as at that time, a hunter named Jara, who had approached the place, mistook Krishna's foot for a deer's face. When you're seeing Krishna in all his brilliance like that, and now you mistake Krishna's foot to be a deer. Thinking he had found his prey, Jara pierced the foot with his arrow, which he had fashioned from the remaining iron fragment of Samba's club. Remember again, Samba, the little boy who pretended to be a woman and then was cursed, and then they found a club, an iron club, which then the king Ugrasena ground into fine shavings and threw in the ocean, and then the last little bit was swallowed by the fish. Well, that piece that was swallowed by the fish had become the tip of the iron of the arrow, which was fired by Jara into the foot of Krishna. Remember, the intent of that whole curse was the entire family of the Yadus, including Krishna, would then be wiped out. Then seeing that four-armed personality, so now when Jara the hunter came closer, he saw that in fact, the person, what he had thought was a deer was in fact the four-handed personality of Vishnu, Sri Krishna, exhibiting that form. The hunter became terrified of the offense he had committed, and he fell down, placing his head upon the feet of Krishna. Now, in the purport, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the statement that the arrow pierced the Lord's foot expresses the point of view that the hunter, who thought he had struck a deer, in fact, the arrow merely touched Krishna's lotus foot and did not even pierce it, since Krishna's limbs are transcendental, Sat Chit Ananda, like we talked about earlier, composed of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. They're spiritual in nature. They cannot be hurt by any material object. Also, in the description of the next verse, the hunter becomes fearful and falls down with his head upon Krishna's feet. Shukadeva Goswami would have stated that the hunter extracted his arrow from the Supreme Lord's foot, but he doesn't state that. There is no extracting of that arrow from Krishna's foot. The hunter Jara now said, "O Madhusudhan, I am a most sinful person. I have committed this act out of ignorance. O purest Lord, Uttama Shloka, one who is glorified with the most beautiful of verses, please forgive this sinner. O Vishnu, the learned say that for any man, constant remembrance of you will destroy the darkness of ignorance. O Master, I have wronged you." So he's feeling deep remorse here. "Therefore, O Lord of Vaikuntha, please kill this sinful hunter of animals immediately so that he may not again commit such offenses against saintly persons. Neither Brahma nor his sons headed by Rudra nor any of the great sages who are masters of Vedic mantras can understand the function of your mystic power. Because of your Maya, your illusory potency, has covered their sight, they remain ignorant of how your mystic power works. Therefore, what can I, such a low-born person, possibly say?" So what he's saying is, even great personalities like Brahma have become bewildered by your mystic power. What to say of me? Oh, I'm a low-born person, a hunter, and I have no good qualities. And yet notice how devoted he is and how beautiful he is in his expression of praise and his wisdom and his understanding. At this point, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said to him, "My dear Jara, do not fear. Please get up. What has been done is actually my own desire. With my permission, go now to the abode of the pious, the spiritual world." So Jara was now sent to the spiritual world. He himself was liberated. So instructed by the Supreme Krishna, who assumes his transcendental body by his own will, the hunter circumambulated. Circumambulate means to go around him 3 times and bowed down to him. Then the hunter departed in an airplane that had appeared just to carry him to the spiritual sky. In the purport it is said, according to the evidence, the quarrel among the members of the Yadu dynasty occurred at sunset. Then Krishna sat down on the bank of the Saraswati river after it was all over. It is stated that a hunter then arrived with the intention of killing a deer, but it is highly unlikely. When millions of warriors had just been killed in a great uproarious battle, and the place had been flooded with blood and strewn with corpses, that a simple hunter would somehow come along trying to kill a deer. Since deer are by nature fearful and timid, how could any deer possibly be on the scene of such a huge battle? And how could a hunter calmly go about his business in the midst of such carnage? Therefore, the withdrawal of the Yadu dynasty and Krishna's own disappearance from this earth were not material historical events. They were indeed a display They were indeed a display of his internal potency for the purpose of winding up his manifest pastimes on earth. So that's how we need to understand this. This was all by his Maya, by his internal potency. Actually, Yoga Maya, his internal potency, for the purpose of winding up his manifest pastimes on earth. At that time now, his chariot driver Daruk was searching for Krishna. As he neared the place where Krishna was sitting, he perceived the aroma of tulsi flowers in the breeze and went in its direction, because Krishna must have been wearing a garland of tulsi leaves along with flowers. Upon seeing Krishna sitting at the foot of a banyan tree, surrounded by his shining weapons, Daruk, chariot driver of Krishna, could not control the affection he felt in his heart. His eyes filled with tears as he rushed down from the chariot and fell at Krishna's feet. Daruk said, "Just as on a moonless night people are merged into darkness and cannot find their way, now that I have lost sight of your lotus feet, my Lord, I have lost my vision and am wandering blindly in darkness. I cannot tell my direction, nor can I find any peace." While the chariot driver was still speaking, before his very eyes, Krishna's chariot rose up into the sky along with its horses. In other words, they were also being sent back to the spiritual world that they had come from. All the divine weapons of Vishnu rose up and followed the chariot. Janardhan Krishna then spoke to his chariot driver, who was most astonished to see all this. Krishna said, "Daruk, go to Dwarka and tell our family members how their loved ones destroyed one another, and also tell them of the disappearance of Balaram and of my present condition." In the purport it is said, Krishna sent his chariot driver back to Vaikuntha along with the horses. The driver sent his chariot driverless back to Vaikuntha, the spiritual world, along with the horses and weapons, because the chariot driver Daruk had some final service to do on earth. Then he said to his chariot driver, "You and your relatives should not remain in Dwarka, because once I have..." No, he was telling this to everyone, the message for everyone. "You and your relatives should not remain in Dwarka, because once I have abandoned that city, it will be inundated by the ocean." That's exactly what happened. The entire island city of Dwarka was inundated by the ocean, and till today exists completely submerged. Many miles off the coast of Gujarat, you can still find it, and the remains are still there. "You should all take your own families together with my parents, and under Arjun's protection go to Indraprasth, which is now New Delhi." So he wanted them all to leave and go towards New Delhi, Indraprasth, the capital of the Pandavas. And you, Daruk, the chariot driver, should be firmly situated in devotion to me, remaining fixed in spiritual knowledge and unattached to material considerations. Understanding these pastimes to be a display of my illusory potency, you should remain peaceful. In the purport it said, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, the word tu here emphasizes that Daruk is an eternally liberated associate of Krishna, having descended from the spiritual world, Vaikuntha. Daruk then circumambulated Krishna and offered obeisances to him again and again. He placed Krishna's lotus feet upon his head and then with a sad heart went back to the city. At this point, Brahma arrived at the place where Krishna was, at Prabhas, along with Shiva and his consort, the sages, the Prajapatis, and all the demigods headed by Indra. They all came to the place where Krishna was sitting and where he was about to leave the world. Forefathers, Siddhas, Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, the great serpents also came along with the Charanas, Yakshasas, Rakshasas, Kinnaras, Apsaras, and relatives of Garuda, greatly eager to witness the departure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As they were coming, all these personalities variously chanted and glorified the birth and activities of Sri Krishna. Crowding the sky with their many airplanes, they showered down flowers with great devotion. Seeing before him Brahma, the grandfather of the universe, the creator of the universe, along with the other demigods, were all his powerful and personal expansions, the Almighty Supreme Lord Krishna closed his lotus eyes, fixing his mind within himself. In the purport it says, according to Srila Sridhar Swami, Krishna had previously answered the prayers of Brahma and the other demigods who had requested Vishnu to descend within this universe for the protection of his servants, the demigods. Now, the demigods arrived before Krishna, each one desiring to take him to their own planet. To avoid these innumerable social obligations, Krishna closed his eyes as if absorbed in samadhi, trance. Srila Jiva Goswami adds that Krishna closed his eyes to instruct the yogis how to leave this mortal world without attachment to one's mystic opulences. Now, without employing the mystic Agneyi meditation to burn up his transcendental body, which is the all-attractive resting place of all the worlds and the object of all contemplation and meditation, Krishna entered into his own abode. So we'll explain that in a minute. In a yogi, yogis are empowered to select the moment of leaving their body, and they can actually cause their body to burst into flames by engaging it in mystic yogic meditation called Agneyi. And thus they would pass into their next life. The demigods similarly employed this mystic fire when being transferred to the spiritual world. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is completely different from all conditioned souls, including the demigods. They are also conditioned souls. So he is completely different from all such conditioned souls like yogis and devas, demigods. And since his body, Krishna's body, is eternal, it is a spiritual body, it is certainly not subject to burning by mundane mystic fire or any other type of fire. As soon as Sri Krishna left the earth, truth, religion, faithfulness, glory, and beauty immediately followed him. Kettle drums resounded in the heavens and flowers showered from the sky. Most of the devas, demigods, and other higher beings led by Brahma could not see Krishna as he was entering his own abode, since he did not reveal his movements. But some of them did catch sight of him, and they were extremely amazed. Just as ordinary men cannot ascertain the path of a lightning bolt as it leaves a cloud, the demigods could not trace out the movements of Krishna as he returned to his abode. Few of the demigods, however, notably Brahma and Shiva, could ascertain how the Supreme Lord's mystic power was working, and thus they became astonished. All the demigods praised his mystic power and then returned to their own planets. The Supreme Lord's appearance and disappearance, which resemble those of conditioned souls, are actually a show enacted by his Maya, his illusory energy, just like the performance of an actor. After creating this universe, he enters into it, plays within it for some time, and at last winds it up. Then the Supreme Lord remains situated in his own transcendental glory, having ceased from the functions of cosmic manifestation. So it's talking about how Supreme Lord Sri Krishna creates this entire universe through the agency of the demigods. That Brahma destroys it at the end as well through the agency of Shiva. But when the world exists, he comes into it, bringing with it awareness of who he is, bringing with him the invitation that we may all choose to love him and be with him. Because how could you love someone who you know nothing about? Right? Everyone tells you, oh, love of God. But how do you love God? How do you love someone who you know nothing about? So Krishna shows you through his pastimes who he is, what he does, what he's like, what he looks like, everything. Krishna had brought the son of his guru back from the planet of Yamaraj. So his guru's son had died, and Krishna had gone to the planet of Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, and he had brought those boys back in the same bodies that they had when they were alive on this earth. He had saved Parikshit, the King Parikshit, who was inquiring from sage Shukadev, and which caused the entire speaking of the Bhagavatam. He saved that Parikshit when he was burned by the Brahmastra of Ashwatthama, when he was just in the womb of his mother. He had saved Parikshit at that time. He conquered in battle even Shiva, who deals death to the agents of death. And he sent the hunter Jara directly to Vaikuntha in his human body. How could such a personality be unable to protect himself? Although Krishna, being the possessor of infinite powers, is the only cause of the creation, maintenance, and destruction of innumerable living beings, he simply did not desire to keep his body in this world any longer. Thus he revealed the destination of those fixed in the self and demonstrated that this mortal world is of no intrinsic value. So he's revealing that all highly evolved beings, all saintly beings, they in time will return to the spiritual world, just as he did. And then comes the blessings here. Anyone who regularly rises early in the morning and carefully chants with devotion the glories of Sri Krishna's transcendental disappearance and his return to his own abode will certainly achieve that same supreme destination. Now, when it comes to, we come back to the story, Daruka, the chariot driver of Krishna, reached Dwarka. When he reached there, he threw himself at the feet of Vasudev, Krishna's father, and Ugrasena, the king, and drenched their feet with his tears, lamenting the loss of Sri Krishna. Daruka delivered the account of the total destruction of the Vrishni dynasty, the Yadus, and upon hearing this, the people became deeply distraught in their hearts and stunned with sorrow. Feeling the overwhelming pain of separation from Krishna, they struck their own faces while hurrying to the place where their relatives lay dead. When Devaki, Krishna's mother, Mohini, Balaram's mother, and Vasudev could not find their sons Krishna and Balaram, they lost consciousness out of anguish. Tormented by separation, Krishna's parents gave up their lives at the very spot. The wives of the Yadavas then climbed onto the funeral pyres, embracing their dead husbands. Arjun felt great distress over separation from Krishna, his dearmost friend, but he consoled himself by remembering the transcendental words that Krishna had sung to him, the Bhagavad Gita. Arjun then saw to it that the funeral rites were properly carried out for the dead, who had no remaining male family members. He executed the required ceremonies for each of the Yadus one after another. As soon as Dwarka was abandoned by Krishna, the ocean flooded it from all sides, sparing only Krishna's palace. So they did the funeral rites and then they quickly left. And as they were leaving, the ocean came in and flooded the entire city of Dwarka. It says it was spared only Krishna's palace. So Jiva Goswami explains here that the external manifestation of Krishna's abode was covered by the ocean. The Lord's eternal Dwarka exists beyond the material universe. So this Dwarka that was there in this world is not the original Dwarka. The original Dwarka is in the spiritual world. Krishna then brings that here. It was made manifest by Vishwakarma, the architect of the Devas, and the Sudharma assembly hall had been brought from the heavenly planets. In that city, there were many beautiful and splendorous residences of the aristocratic Yadu dynasty. The most beautiful residence of all was that of Sri Krishna. Even in the modern age, people who live near the site of the original Dwarka sometimes catch a glimpse of it in the ocean. Ultimately, Krishna's associates and abode are eternal, and one who understands this is qualified to become fully Krishna conscious. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally present in Dwarka, in the spiritual world. It is the most auspicious of all auspicious places, and merely remembering it destroys all contamination. Krishna took the survivors of the Yadu dynasty, Arjun took the survivors of the Yadu dynasty, the women, children, and old men, to Indraprastha, where he installed Vajra as the ruler of the Yadus. Hearing from Arjun of the death of their friend, my dear King Parikshit, your grandfathers established you as the maintainer of the dynasty and left to prepare for their departure from this world. So basically at this point, Parikshit was put in charge of the kingdom of Indraprastha. And then his parents, the Pandavas, including Arjun, left for the Himalayas. And then finally it says, a person who with faith engages in chanting the glories of these various pastimes and incarnations of Vishnu, the Lord of Lords, will gain liberation from all karma and from all sins. The all-auspicious exploits of the all-attractive incarnations of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, and also the pastimes he performed as a child are described in this Srimad Bhagavatam and in other scriptures. Anyone who clearly chants these descriptions of his pastimes will attain transcendental loving service unto Sri Krishna, who is the goal of life for all perfect sages. And with that, conclude the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Next week we'll resume with the 12th canto, which is a very profound one and talks to us about the age of Kali and what we can expect in the times to come. Thank you so much for having been here, for having heard and listened so attentively. I'm deeply honored by your presence. Thank you. Hare Krishna.